Welcome to the Chase and Embrace Show, where we interview women who are chasing God and embracing His purpose for her life, with the hopes to encourage you to do the thing that God is calling you to do. Hey everyone, thank you for coming to the Chase and Embrace Show. My name is Sharon, I am your host, and with me I have Krystina Dixon with Breathe Life Coaching. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, and for those that don't know, this is episode 3 of the Saboteur series that we are doing in partnership with Krystina and Breathe Life Coaching. And we are super excited to find out who we are going to cover today.
Today we're going to talk about the hyperachiever.
My favorite! Yay!
So just as a reminder, when we talk about these saboteurs, we talked about the judge, we talked about the controller, now we're talking about the hyperachiever. Everyone has all of these to some extent. It's just a matter of which ones tend to dominate for you in any given context. And the judge is with all of them. We call these accomplices, but they're really just when the judge calls in condemnation or shame or judgment, the saboteurs position themselves as they're going to help alleviate that. But they're built out of your survival instincts from childhood. They no longer serve you in that capacity. So they tend to be your strengths. They tend to be things that have helped you in the past, and that's how they can convince you that they're helping you now. When you're in control, they are your strengths. When they are running you, that's when we turn into self-sabotaging and we contradict and counteract what the intention is.
Interesting. I'm kind of curious to find out what the good and the bad with the high achiever, because in our world there is no bad with being a high achieving. So I'm kind of curious to see how this goes.
So the hyperachiever, all the saboteurs are rooted in those core values that we talked about. They change based on the saboteur that we're discussing. So for the hyperachiever, the values tend to be purpose, success, significance. You might have someone who, as a child, excelled at certain things and she kind of became admired because of it. And so she creates this demeanor that's sort of impressive and accomplished, usually pretty polished, kind of afraid to not be. And
Hmm.
somewhere along the way, she learned that achievement is synonymous with approval, success equals worth, and slowing down means falling behind.
Mm.
So you tend to see this. Now, again, we all have all the saboteurs, but you tend to see a
Right.
dominant for a woman who was raised in a home where achievement was really celebrated and just consistently affirmed. And I will be honest with you, when it came to my kids, this is one way that I feel I failed them because I did put a lot of emphasis on achievement. I did not know at the time that what that translates to for others is this sense of my love, my approval, my affection is linked to your achievement. And that's how it
Interesting.
translates. Yes. So if she got good grades and she kind of got rewarded or applauded for that, got recognized for being a star athlete, typically it's someone that teachers praise a lot, parents are super proud of, really didn't grow up with any kind of harsh criticism other than if they failed at something.
Oh, okay.
So who she was, like this, ooh, you're a super amazing person, is linked to what she did, not who she really was, just for the
Is
sake of her
yeah.
being.
That's very interesting. I'm trying to think of my own childhood. I know that there was an emphasis on grades, but I definitely was not a high achiever in sports. I was always the last one picked. I'm not. I'm more of a klutz than anything. So definitely didn't get that. But I think for me, I don't know if it was just the age that I grew up in or what, but it was almost like bad to be a nerd.
Mhm.
to be this very high grades all the time, it was like uncool. So my parent teacher conference was where your daughter's not applying herself well enough. She could be a straight A student if she wanted and put some emphasis into it. Not gonna be a nerd,
Well,
but
in our school system too, I don't know how it is where you are, but I know
mm,
here in Florida, a lot of the schools will use this, especially in the lower grades, the low elementary grades will use the green light, yellow light, red light kind of analogy. There's orange in there. And I can remember my children getting into the car, and the first question was, "So what color were you on today?"
yeah.
And I didn't realize the impact that that left on them, that it didn't matter how you felt, it didn't matter what your experience was and how you processed that. Like I stopped being curious about who they were and started being more interested in what color they were on.
It's very interesting because my daughter was actually, they had the same thing, but she was opposite. She was always orange or red because she's a kinesthetic learner. And so sitting in a chair just didn't work for her. But I did a lot of testing to try to figure out, what was going on and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that she felt validated. But yes, it was the same thing. It's like, why are you, and then like, she was always one of those ones that pushed the border. And as long as you allow her to push, she would continue to push. And so I had a teacher like one time in math say, and I think this was high school or middle school, I can't remember which. And they're like, well, she always ends up in the back of the room because that was number 3 step. Number 4 step was detention. So I'm just like, I'm not in the room. I said, she's going to push her buttons. That's just how she is. So I said, and skip 1 and 2, put her right. If she stops, if her wall is step number 3 in the back of the room by herself, I said, just skip 1 and 2 and don't do a warning. Don't do, that. Just put her right in the back in the room. And then if the next thing she does, she goes to detention. So I understand about that pressure of always needing to perform. And she didn't fit into that way the schools educate. So she was always this bad kid, but she's not a bad kid. It just wasn't her learning style. So I get that a lot. I understand that, and how now looking with what you said with your kids and then talking about this, how yes, and she, I do believe, is a high achiever. I mean, she got her master's degree and she may possibly go get her doctorate degree, and so yeah, she does have that effect of needing to be a high achiever.
So when it's working, like when it's serving her, it does. It fuels ambition and focus and goal setting. It's a strength. It's a good thing. What we're talking about in the saboteur situation is when it's out of control. So that her worth, her value becomes tied to her performance.
Hmm. That she might
So
have some of that because
you
of her
can have
dad.
someone who is high achieving, but they're like a healthy high achieving because it's not dictating their work or their
Right.
worth. So what happens is hyperachievers tend to, that's why it's hyperachiever, it's
Mhm.
overdone, right? Because you
Yeah.
start to feed on that external validation more than your internal drive.
Yeah, I actually think that I struggled with this because I went in my phase, I was kind of deviant. I didn't go to college right away. I went to the party scene, blah, blah, blah. And so when I became a mother, I was like, I got to do something with my life. And so then I went and got my bachelor's, I got my master's, and I was working and raising a child. And I remember going to the doctor saying, I'm just so tired. And the doctor says, it's because you're doing so much. You have all these things that you're doing. No wonder why you're exhausted. And so I felt like I needed to make up for that lost time. But if you look at my career from the world standpoint, they wouldn't think that it was successful. I wasn't top 40, under 40, and all those labels. I didn't work for the big companies and all of that. But the thing is, I've decided that my career was successful because I loved everything that I've done. And I think that's more important because we spend so much time in our life working that You should love what you do. And I've been learning that this is something that is not the norm. And I find that super sad.
Yeah, and sometimes what happens too with the hyperachievers, the lies that fall in line, like that the
Hmm.
saboteur tells her, is like, if you slow down, you'll fall behind, which might have been some of what you felt when you were juggling everything. It could
Yeah.
be something you slipped into. It may not have even been something that was like, remember I said that we all have all of these to some extent. And different seasons, different contexts, different circumstances can bring them to the forefront.
Oh, okay.
So maybe in that season, you were a hyperachiever. You know, you had all these things you were trying to do, and you felt like if I slow down, I'll fall behind. Or I'll rest when I've actually earned it. That's
Hmm.
another one. But you'll also see it go the other way too. Sometimes when you hear people, and I'm guilty of this, if somebody gives me praise, says I did a good job, I'll immediately be like, ah, it's no big deal. Anybody could have done it.
Yeah.
Or she may even hesitate to celebrate the wins that she gets because the saboteur tells her, yeah, that was good, but not quite enough.
Mm.
Or looking to the next accomplishment to fulfill her. She never really gets to enjoy and sit in. For example, when I got my master's, building up to my master's, I was like, oh, I can't wait. It's going to be great.
Uh-huh.
But then I got it, and there it was literally just a, okay, cool. Next was the next thing that I needed to accomplish. So there's never really any true satisfaction. There's no end point,
Right.
right? There's just like, I'll be happy when, but when is always shifting. It's always progressing and moving.
Are you still struggling with your next thing?
No, not anymore. I think I've pretty much, the hyperachiever isn't as much of a saboteur for me because I've had some life lessons along the way. God has been kind enough to check me on those.
Mm-hmm. How did he check you, if you don't mind sharing?
So, for example, prior to getting into coaching, I had done my hyperachiever state, had done a lot of work, and I was licensed as a real estate broker, an insurance broker, and a mortgage loan officer.
Wow.
Yes. So for me at the time, it was safety, it was security because there was no way I was ever going to be without a job. I mean, I could get a job tomorrow in any of those fields. And I worked in them and I was not happy. I had good times. There were times that it was nice. It usually was reflected in my paycheck. That was the accomplishment,
Right.
but it never satisfied me. And now that I'm doing what I was called to do, what I was built to do, I'm satisfied without having that. And what happened was my husband, I love him so much, but sometimes he listens a little too well and like throws my words back at me, which is a good thing.
Yes.
It's a good thing. He uses the right words.
Right.
But you know, it's a lot of CE work. It's a lot. It's not a lot of money, but it is money to keep the licenses going and things like that. And I had been out of those fields and still keeping my licenses going because I had earned them. And I'm going to be really honest and transparent with you. There was part of me, part of what drove that was, for example, in insurance licensing, there's different levels of licensing you can get. And so the basic level that everybody had, well, that wasn't good enough for me. I needed to go
Oh,
and get the next one. And then the more people around me that got that one, I needed to go and get the next one. And it's almost like I felt like that number or those letters behind my name defined who I was. And I will be honest, it was a superiority thing because I felt so insecure and so worthless and so invaluable that I needed to, for my own, it's like how a bully will knock somebody down to build themselves up. In
right.
order to elevate myself, I had to be more qualified or better than
Mm-hmm.
the people around me. Now, I'm not proud to admit that, but I've grown through it so I could share it with you. So
Yes.
I'm no longer driven by that, but that's what it looks like to be a
Mm-hmm.
hyperachiever. That there can be even, sometimes you'll even see like a jealousy. Like it's tough to celebrate somebody else's win without you pushing for your next win.
Right. That
If
makes
you don't
sense.
keep Yeah, if you don't keep pushing, someone else will take the opportunity. But there can even be jealousy about like why do other people get to relax? Like the hyperachiever has a tough time relaxing.
Yes, that is for sure. And there is some. And then one of the things that you were saying is that each saboteur is fueled by a fear. So fear of falling behind, fear of, getting homeless, really, if it's in regards to work and career. You're like, you have 3 licenses, so you're never going to be without a job. Well, in my situation, same thing. I had, I don't know how many jobs, but anyways, I'm, leaving one of them. And it was that fear of like, oh, well, I don't know if that contract is going to renew or that contract is going to renew. So I'm going to hold on to all of them so
Yes.
that, but I'm mentally exhausted. And
Yes.
so I just said, you know what, this is not worth it. I need to not do this. I need to have rest and time with Jesus and to follow his lead for my career.
Well, I will ask you the words that my husband gave to me that really shifted it for me. When I was
Yes.
renewing all these licenses, he said to me, "Are you keeping those as a safety net?" And I said, "Yeah. I mean, I put a lot of work into them. Yeah, if I need a job, bam, tomorrow I've got one." And he questioned me and he challenged me and he said, "I wonder what God would do if you let go of that safety net." So it came time to renew those licenses and I let all of them go.
Congratulations.
Now, when I did that, I was kind of compelled to just go before the Lord and say, "All right, look, it's like the loaves and fish. Here's what I've got. This is what I have now. I don't have any of these licenses. Those were for me. They weren't for you. Here's what I've got. Let me see what you're going to do." And he's done so much more, and I'm so much more aligned. I mean, I was going the wrong direction. I was all jacked up, and he aligned it so much better for me.
That's amazing. He's so amazing. Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see what he's going to do now that I've let that go. Which it took me 7 months of messages of, you need to let that go.
So, and a lot of times what we do as a hyperachiever, when I said, why do other people get to rest, but I don't, we say that but we actually have a fear of being still. And we talked a little bit about the fear of insignificance, the fear of being unworthy, your performance is tied to your value, being overlooked or forgotten. But the fear of stillness is an interesting one because it comes from a completely different place. And that comes
Mm,
from when we are still, we are faced with parts of our identity that cannot be measured. So if it's not measurable, how do I quantify it? How do I validate it? How do I prove it? If God says, "I am beloved," well, I can't measure that.
right.
So, and that is, and that's what hyperachievers can struggle with, the idea of unconditional love and the idea of you don't have to work for salvation. You don't have to work to please God. The idea that you are in and of yourself absolutely everything that He wants you to be for Him to love you is very difficult for a hyperachiever to wrap their head around.
Yeah. It's very difficult for many people to think that they don't need to do anything to get salvation, and that's why Jesus is so amazing. That he did it even though we didn't deserve it. And there's nothing that we can do to get it except for have a relationship with him.
Yeah. I want to ask you, so when you talked about, that you might have had a hyperachiever season
Mhm.
going to school and working and parenting and all that, did you ever feel like you kind of numbed out your emotional needs? You kind of ignored them in order to stay productive?
Do that now. What are you talking about? The
It's very
answer would be
common in a
yes.
hyperachiever for us to do that. And we fear failure because it is our self-worth is everything. It's all based on that achievement, that accomplishment, that performance. So if I fail, I just validate that I'm not worthy.
Yeah. I'm trying to stop what I call the bunny jump. I jump from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing. And I'm mentally exhausted and I can't remember anything. And I'm just, yeah. So I'm so happy that I'm letting go of one thing, and we'll see what God says to let go next.
And the question is, will you pick something else up to replace that? Because that's what the hyperachiever will usually do. They create, they're excited to have the void, but when the void's there, they find something else to fill it with. And there is another saboteur that you'll probably like based on what you just said, and that's called the restless saboteur.
I can't wait to learn about that one. Well, this has been very eye-opening, Krystina. And if anybody wants to learn more about the saboteurs, or they know they have an overactive, higher achiever personality, then Krystina's your girl to help you get through that. She has techniques that she can provide for you and to work through that so that, you don't have to be mentally exhausted. You don't have to always achieve, 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 because you know what? Jesus loves you for who you are and who you created to be, and He has a purpose for you. So that, like you said, aligns with you. So I'm so excited. These are very fascinating, and I appreciate you and everyone. Tune in for next week and see what's next.
Thank you for having me.